Hey guys, tonight we're slipping quietly into the world of one of history's most dazzling minds, Leonardo da Vinci. Picture yourself wandering through the sun-dappled streets of Renaissance Florence, the air thick with the scent of fresh paint and the warm earthiness of oiled wood in bustling workshops. You're surrounded by the hum of artisans at work, the chatter of scholars debating philosophy, and the distant clang of metal on anvil. And right there, in a cluttered studio cluttered with sketches, inks, and curious contraptions, sits Leonardo himself. The man everyone calls a genius, a painter, a sculptor, an engineer, the ultimate Renaissance polymath. But here's the twist. As brilliant as Leonardo is, you probably wouldn't want to count on him to finish that thing he just started. Imagine if your friend was the sort of person who jumped from one idea to the next, leaving half-complete projects scattered like breadcrumbs. Leonardo's legacy is famously dazzling: the Mona Lisa's enigmatic smile, the Last Supper's dramatic intensity, but beneath that glowing reputation lies a less tidy truth. He was the master of starting things, and rarely finishing them. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, let me know where you were listening from and what time it is there in the comments below. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Leonardo da Vinci's name practically sparkles in the halls of history. Born in 1452, he's often painted as the archetype of the Renaissance man, someone whose talents seemingly knew no bounds. You can't mention Leonardo without thinking of the Mona Lisa, that famously inscrutable portrait whose smile has launched 1,000 theories and bedtime reveries. Or the Last Supper, where every character's emotion is frozen mid-drama like a photograph centuries before cameras existed. But if you peer beyond these masterpieces, something almost poetic emerges. A trail of half-finished sketches, notebooks bursting with ideas never quite brought to life, and machines that seem more like dreams than blueprints. Imagine opening one of Leonardo's notebooks. Instead of neat, finished plans, you find pages crowded with swirling annotations, diagrams of flying machines that look like birds caught mid-flap, and anatomical drawings so detailed they almost breathe on the page. Yet many of these projects were never realized. It's as if Leonardo's mind was a kaleidoscope, constantly turning and refracting new ideas, but never settling long enough to complete what he'd begun. One of the most famous mainstream facts you might already know is that Leonardo sketched a design for a flying machine, an early helicopter, essentially. This was centuries before the first actual helicopters took to the skies. His design, a sort of giant screw made of reeds and linen, was revolutionary. But, and here's the kicker, there's no evidence he ever built or even tried to build it. He was fascinated by flight, dissecting birds' wings and studying airflow, but he never settled down to turn those sketches into a working model. It's almost as if he was chasing the idea itself, the thrill of imagining flight, rather than the practicalities of engineering it. Here is a quirky tidbit that might surprise you. Leonardo's notebooks were written in mirror script, backwards from right to left. Scholars still debate why he chose to write this way. Was it a personal code to keep his ideas secret? A trick to avoid smudging ink with his left hand as he wrote? Or simply a habit born from the comfort of being left-handed in a right-handed world? Whatever the reason, it adds a layer of mystery to his work, as if even his words were half hidden, inviting us to decipher the man behind the genius. This restless, almost distracted nature of Leonardo's creativity is a puzzle that historians have been trying to piece together for centuries. Experts still ponder whether his notorious tendency to leave projects unfinished was simply the natural result of his boundless curiosity, or if it was also shaped by the complexities of his personality and the expectations of the time. Was he a perfectionist paralyzed by his own standards, or a visionary who thrived in the chaos of unfinished ideas? Maybe a bit of both. As you imagine Leonardo in his studio, you might picture a man surrounded by half-built machines, a mechanical knight that could sit up and wave its arms, a giant crossbow, a diving suit designed to explore underwater. He sketched all these inventions with meticulous detail, yet none were fully constructed during his lifetime. It is almost charming to think of him as a man so enthralled by possibility that the act of inventing was the reward, completion, a mere afterthought. And then there's his approach to anatomy. Leonardo famously dissected human bodies, a practice that was controversial, even taboo, in his day. His anatomical drawings are some of the most accurate of the Renaissance, showing muscles, veins, and organs with unprecedented clarity. But despite the groundbreaking nature of this work, he never published his findings. So much knowledge remained locked away in his private notebooks, unread and unseen by the scientific community for centuries. It is as if he was more driven by the joy of discovery than by the desire for fame or academic recognition. There's a gentle irony in all this. The very things that make Leonardo da Vinci a symbol of genius, his curiosity, his vision, his relentless questioning, also prevented him from tying neat bows around his work. In a world that often values completion and results, Leonardo's legacy reminds us that sometimes the beauty lies in the pursuit itself. The sketches he left behind have inspired engineers, artists, and dreamers long after his time, even if he never finished the projects himself. You might wonder, what does this mean for how we think about creativity today? Leonardo's story suggests that brilliance isn't always tidy or wrapped up in a neat package. It's messy, wandering, and often unfinished. Like a half-read book you return to again and again, his unfinished thoughts invite us to dream alongside him, to imagine what could be rather than what is. And isn't that a comforting thought? That it's okay to leave things incomplete as long as you keep imagining, keep exploring, keep letting your mind wander into the wild unknown. Leonardo da Vinci didn't just paint masterpieces, he painted possibilities, some still waiting to be realized. So next time you see that famous smile of the Mona Lisa, remember, behind it lies a restless mind, always chasing the next idea, the next invention, the next glimpse of wonder. And maybe, just maybe, there's a little bit of Leonardo in all of us, an endless curiosity that refuses to be boxed in, a love for the unfinished, the imperfect, and the beautifully incomplete. And while we tend to celebrate the finished product, Leonardo's true gift was showing us that sometimes the journey, the endless sketching, the half-formed dreams is just as important as the destination. Now, as you settle deeper into this quiet night, imagine flipping through Leonardo's pages yourself. Scribbles and sketches catching the moonlight, a soft rustling like the whisper of an old, restless mind. And perhaps, in that gentle stirring, you'll find a spark of your own unfinished dreams, waiting patiently for their moment to take flight. You find yourself stepping gently into the labyrinthine corridors of Leonardo's mind. It's a curious place, vivid and sprawling, more like a wild garden than a tidy library. The scent of old parchment mingles faintly with the earthy aroma of wet clay and oil paint. Somewhere nearby, a quill scratches hurriedly across paper, only to be abruptly set aside, as if the hand behind it has caught a glimpse of something brighter just beyond the edge of vision. This is a mind that wandered endlessly and joyfully, forever chasing the sparkle of new curiosities. Leonardo da Vinci, the ultimate Renaissance man, is often celebrated for his masterpieces, the Mona Lisa's enigmatic smile, the Last Supper's perfect composition, but behind those iconic works lies a restless spirit, a mind that was never fully at rest. His notebooks are bursting with sketches of flying machines, anatomical studies, architectural plans, and inventions that seem pulled straight from dreams. Yet many of these projects were never completed. You almost want to imagine him as a distracted child in a vast workshop, his fingers stained with charcoal and paint, abandoning one toy to grab another, eyes wide with wonder at 100 possibilities all at once. It's said that curiosity killed the cat, but in Leonardo's case it seems curiosity propelled him forward, even if it meant leaving a trail of unfinished ideas in his wake. You can almost hear the gentle sigh of a man who dove headfirst into every subject he encountered, only to be pulled away by the whisper of something else, something new, something unexplored, before he could finish what he'd begun. One mainstream fact you might recall is that Leonardo was not just a painter and sculptor, but also a scientist and engineer, centuries ahead of his time. His fascination with anatomy led him to meticulously dissect human corpses to understand the intricacies of muscles and bones, practice that was both rare and controversial in his day. But even here, in his scientific pursuits, you notice that while his drawings are extraordinarily detailed and insightful, he never published his findings. His anatomical studies, as groundbreaking as they were, remained locked away in his notebooks, hidden from the world for centuries. Perhaps it's this very tendency to start but not finish that humanizes him. You might wonder if Leonardo's genius was not so much about perfect execution as it was about relentless inquiry. In a way, he reminds you of that friend who starts a dozen hobby projects simultaneously, learning guitar one day, baking bread the next, then suddenly diving into coding or watercolor painting, and somehow never quite settles on just one. It's not a failure to finish, but an impulsive thirst for knowledge and experience. There's an almost whimsical charm in this chaotic brilliance. Have you ever leafed through one of his notebooks? They're like a visual stream of consciousness, filled with sketches of everything from fantastical machines to botanical drawings, anatomical diagrams, and even early concepts for a helicopter. Yes, Leonardo dreamt of human flight long before powered airplanes existed. His aerial screw, a spiral-shaped contraption resembling a giant screw meant to lift off the ground, remains one of his most famous inventions that never got off the drawing board. You can almost hear him muttering, "If only the materials were lighter or the wind a bit kinder." Among these pages you might stumble upon a quirky tidbit. Leonardo's fascination with water extended beyond practical engineering. He studied the flow and eddies of water with such obsessive attention that some scholars suggest he approached fluid dynamics with the precision of a modern physicist. There's a particular sketch where he traced the patterns of turbulent water, capturing its unpredictable dance with such grace it almost feels poetic. It's as if he was trying to capture the very breath of nature itself, not just its mechanics. Yet despite all this, many of his inventions were never built or tested. It remains unclear why Leonardo didn't push more of his designs into reality. Was it the limitations of technology in his era, or perhaps his own restless mind, always shifting focus before a project could be completed? Debate continues among historians about whether Leonardo's unfinished works were the result of perfectionism, a lack of practical ambition, or simply an insatiable curiosity that refused to be tamed. You might find it oddly comforting to realize that even a genius like Leonardo struggled with the same human flaw, an inability to finish every task he started. In fact, his unfinished works reveal something beautiful about the creative process itself, that sometimes the act of beginning, of imagining, is just as important as bringing things to completion. Imagine sitting in his workshop for a moment. The air is thick with the smell of linseed oil and wood shavings. You hear the murmur of water from a nearby fountain as Leonardo sketches an idea for a water-powered machine. His eyes flicker from one drawing to another, from a mechanical lion to a flying machine, from detailed studies of plants to architectural plans for a new city. Each page is a doorway to a different passion, a new obsession. You can almost feel the gentle frustration mixed with exhilaration as he juggles these endless fascinations. And there's a subtle irony here. Leonardo's unfinished projects, rather than diminishing his legacy, add layers of charm and mystery. They invite us to wander alongside him, to explore the what-ifs and could-have-beens. For instance, his plans for a giant bronze horse, commissioned by the Duke of Milan, were ambitious and ahead of their time. The sculpture was meant to be the largest equestrian statue ever created. Leonardo poured his heart into the design, but the bronze was repurposed for military use, and the statue never materialized. Today, you can visit a smaller, modern replica, but the original remains a tantalizing ghost of what might have been. In many ways, Leonardo's unfinished works echo the very essence of the Renaissance spirit, a time of boundless curiosity, exploration, and the joy of discovery. He lived in an age where knowledge was exploding in every direction, and he eagerly drank from every well. He was a collector of ideas, a dreamer who sketched inventions centuries ahead of their practical use, and an artist who never ceased to marvel at the world around him. Here is a gentle nudge for you. Next time you find yourself starting a project but never quite finishing it, think of Leonardo. He reminds you that the journey of curiosity, the thrill of opening new doors, is itself a masterpiece, even if the final product remains unfinished. Sometimes the beauty lies in the act of wondering, not in the neat completion of tasks. You notice, too, that Leonardo's notebooks are written in a kind of mirror script, backwards from right to left. Some say this was to keep his ideas secret. Others suggest it was simply because he was left-handed and found it easier to write that way. This little quirk adds another layer to the mystery of a man who seemed to live partly in the shadows of his own thoughts, always just out of reach, always a step ahead. As you drift deeper into this exploration, it's clear that Leonardo's mind was a kaleidoscope, each turn revealing new patterns, colors, and shapes. He didn't confine himself to one discipline, but embraced the messy, beautiful chaos of interdisciplinary thinking. And yes, this meant many projects were left unfinished, but it also meant his legacy is endlessly rich and inspiring. In the quiet moments, you might hear a soft chuckle from the past, imagining Leonardo's own playful frustration as he juggled ideas like brightly colored balls in the air, sometimes dropping one, always catching another. His life invites you to embrace your own curiosities, to not worry so much about finishing every chapter, but to keep turning pages with wonder and delight. So, as you close this chapter of wandering through Leonardo's restless mind, remember this. His unfinished works are not failures but invitations. Invitations to imagine, to explore, and to find joy in the endless dance of ideas. In the grand mosaic of his life, the unfinished pieces shine just as brightly as the completed ones. Rest now with that thought, and perhaps, just perhaps, you'll find your own mind wandering a little more freely tonight. You find yourself turning a delicate, yellowing page in Leonardo's vast, chaotic notebooks, stepping softly into the realm of his dreams of flight. The paper is rough beneath your fingertips, a tactile whisper of centuries past, as if you can almost hear the scratch of his quill, tentative yet brimming with excitement. Here, sprawled across the page in a curious mixture of meticulous detail and wild ambition, are the sketches of machines designed to conquer the sky, machines that, tantalizingly, never quite left the ground. Leonardo da Vinci, the quintessential Renaissance man, didn't just paint serene faces or sculpt figures of myth and legend. He was, above all, a dreamer of impossible things, and nowhere is that more evident than in his flying machines. You might know the famous helicopter sketch, a spiraling contraption resembling a giant screw poised to bore its way into the heavens. It is almost comical to think that this was the 15th century answer to vertical flight, long before the Wright brothers even dreamed of their first powered airplane. Yet, the sheer ambition behind this idea is breathtaking. Imagine the smell of fresh ink mingling with the musty aroma of old parchment, the soft rustle of pages as you lean closer, trying to decipher the delicate shading and notes in mirror script. This aerial screw, as Leonardo called it, is a masterpiece of imagination. It was designed to be powered by men turning cranks, spinning that giant helical blade to create lift, though realistically it would have been far too heavy to rise off the ground. Still, there's a kind of whimsical beauty in the notion, isn't there? A giant screw, like some mechanical pine cone, attempting to drill into the sky itself. It's as if Leonardo's mind was a child's, dreaming up impossible toys, but with the precision of a scientist and the vision of a poet. But Leonardo's fascination with flight didn't stop at the helicopter. You trace your finger over another set of drawings. The ornithopter designs, inspired by the graceful flapping of bird wings. Here, slender wooden frames and thin membranes are sketched in painstaking detail, with annotations describing how a pilot might flap the wings using a complex system of pulleys and levers. It's a beautiful, almost poetic concept. Man imitating bird, capturing the essence of nature's flight with human ingenuity. You can almost hear the soft creak of wood and the flutter of fabric as you imagine these machines in motion, if only in a dream. And yet none of these inventions ever took to the air. They remained sketches, brilliant yet grounded by the harsh realities of physics and materials available at the time. You feel a gentle sadness, a whisper of melancholy in knowing that these miraculous contraptions were destined to stay on paper, beautiful failures frozen in time. There's a peculiar charm in this imperfection, though. Leonardo's flying machines are like dreams caught mid-flight, glimpses of a mind soaring ahead of its era, but tethered by circumstance. It's a reminder that even genius can be incomplete, that the thrill lies not just in success, but in the audacity to imagine. Here as a mainstream truth to anchor your wandering thoughts. Leonardo is often credited as one of the first to seriously conceptualize human flight, centuries before it was technologically feasible. His detailed observations of birds, his studies of air currents, and his attempts to mimic nature, solutions, laid foundational ideas that would inspire inventors long after his time. The Renaissance was a period of rediscovery and invention, and Leonardo was at its heart, chasing the sky with nothing but ink and enthusiasm. Now for a quirky little detail that might tickle your fancy. Among his many sketches, Leonardo included designs for a parachute, a pyramid-shaped canopy that he claimed would allow a person to fall safely from any height. It's said that he even tested a rough version of this parachute himself, jumping from a tower in Milan. Whether that leap actually happened, or is just another layer of legend, is uncertain, but the image is delightful. A man centuries ahead of his time, leaping boldly and trusting in the power of his own invention, even if the world wasn't quite ready. Experts still ponder whether Leonardo's obsession with flight was driven more by scientific curiosity or by a poetic yearning for freedom. Was he trying to solve a mechanical problem, or was he at some level chasing a metaphor? The eternal human desire to rise above earthly bounds. Debate continues about why, despite the brilliance of his designs, he never attempted to build a fully functional flying machine. Was it a practical limitation, or did his restless mind simply move on to the next fascination? leaving these airborne dreams unfinished, like so many other projects. As you linger over these sketches, you notice the beautiful contradictions etched into every line. The precision of the technical drawings contrasts with the wildness of the ideas. The impossible shapes, the delicate cross-hatching, the notes written backward in his trademark mirrored handwriting, as if trying to keep his secrets just out of reach. You can almost hear Leonardo's quiet chuckle, a mischievous whisper from the past, knowing that these inventions would never fly, but loving the chase all the same. You might imagine the studio where these ideas were born, the faint scent of linseed oil from paint mingling with the earthy aroma of fresh wood and metal scraps. The hum of the bustling workshop, the soft clink of tools, the rustle of paper as Leonardo's assistants tried to keep up with his flurry of ideas. And yet, amid all this activity, there was a restless mind, bouncing from one concept to the next, never quite settling, never quite finishing. Perhaps that's the real story here. Leonardo's flight wasn't just mechanical, it was a flight of the mind. He soared through ideas, touching down briefly only to take off again, leaving behind a trail of sketches and half-finished designs that still inspire wonder centuries later. In a way, his unfinished machines are more poetic than any completed invention could be. Artifacts of a mind forever in motion, refusing to be grounded by the limits of the present. You might chuckle softly to yourself, imagining what it would have been like if Leonardo had access to modern technology. Would he have become the world's first drone designer? A pioneer of space travel? Or perhaps he'd still be sketching, endlessly distracted by the next shiny idea, forever chasing the horizon. It's comforting to think that even the greatest genius can be delightfully scatterbrained. And isn't there something profoundly human in that? The urge to dream big, to reach for the sky, even if our feet never leave the ground. Leonardo's flying machines, with their improbable designs and unfinished promise, invite you to celebrate the beauty of imagination itself. Messy, incomplete, but endlessly inspiring. As you close the notebook gently, the faint sound of a distant bird call drifts through the window. It's a reminder that while Leonardo's machines never took flight, his ideas did. They soared through centuries, carried on the wings of curiosity and wonder. And in that you find a quiet comfort. A whisper that says it's okay not to finish everything, as long as you keep dreaming, keep sketching those wild flights of fancy, and keep looking up at the sky. You find yourself stepping quietly into a shadowed chamber of Leonardo's mind, a place where curiosity hums like the faintest heartbeat, and the air feels thick with the scent of old parchment, ink, and something faintly metallic, like the whisper of scalpels against bone. Here lies one of the most intimate, yet quietly unfinished chapters of his restless genius, his anatomical studies. Unlike his more famous paintings, these works weren't meant for gallery walls or public acclaim. Instead, they lingered in notebooks tucked into the dusty corners of his workshop, half-finished explorations of flesh and bone that reveal a man endlessly fascinated by the human body, yet hesitant or distracted enough to never quite share them with the world. Imagine Leonardo in a dimly lit room, the flicker of candlelight casting dancing shadows on the walls. The subtle, almost eerie rustle of parchment as he turns the pages is punctuated by the occasional scratch of his quill. An artist's stroke merging with a scientist's precision. His anatomical drawings are astonishingly detailed, capturing nerves, muscles, and the complex architecture of the human skeleton with a clarity that would not be matched for centuries. You can almost hear him whisper, "Look closer," inviting you to see the body not just as a vessel for life, but as a marvel of engineering, a machine of exquisite complexity. One mainstream fact you might already know but bears repeating in this quiet setting is that Leonardo was among the first in the Western world to systematically dissect human bodies to understand anatomy. Unlike many of his contemporaries who relied on ancient texts or animal dissection, Leonardo sought the truth beneath the skin, literally. His notebooks brim with sketches of hearts, lungs, muscles, even the intricate structure of the human fetus. These weren't mere artistic studies, they were careful scientific investigations, blending art and science in a way that was revolutionary for his time. Yet what's particularly poignant here is that despite this groundbreaking work, Leonardo never published his anatomical findings. They remained locked away, scattered across various notebooks, many of which were lost or ignored for centuries. Imagine how different the history of medicine might have been if his work had been shared. And yet, perhaps that very silence is part of the story. His anatomical studies are a testament to his infinite curiosity, but also to his restless mind, always shifting to the next idea before one was fully complete. It's as if he was chasing shadows in the dark, knowing there was something extraordinary just out of reach, but never quite settling long enough to catch it. There's a quirky tidbit tucked away in this narrative that feels almost like a secret handshake between Leonardo and those who stumble upon his notebook centuries later. He famously made detailed studies of the human skull, but he also sketched an odd, almost whimsical image of a fetus in a womb that looks more like a delicate, curled-up alien than anything you'd expect from a 15th century artist. This strange, tender drawing, complete with labels and annotations, reveals a man who was not only dissecting the human body, but trying to understand the miracle of life itself, a kind of biological poetry hidden within scientific inquiry. It's a beautiful contradiction, meticulous and precise, yet oddly poetic and personal. But here's where the story takes a reflective turn. Experts still ponder why Leonardo never formalized or published these anatomical studies during his lifetime. Was it a matter of modesty, or perhaps fear that the scientific community of the time wasn't ready for such radical truths? Or maybe, as some scholars suggest, Leonardo's boundless curiosity and habit of chasing new ideas meant he simply moved on before completing this monumental task. There's a certain melancholy in this open question because it highlights the tension between genius and the human condition, the way even the brightest minds can be prisoners of distraction or self-doubt. As you delve deeper into these anatomical sketches, you might notice the almost obsessive attention to detail. Leonardo didn't just draw the gross structures, he captured the subtle interplay of muscles and tendons, the way veins branch like delicate rivers beneath the skin, and the mechanics of the heart as a dynamic pump. One of his most fascinating studies is a detailed drawing of the human heart, complete with annotations describing the flow of blood and the valve's function, centuries before William Harvey would formally describe circulation. Yet despite this genius, Leonardo's anatomical notes were more like a personal diary of discovery than a formal scientific text. They were never intended for mass consumption, which feels both frustrating and strangely intimate, as if you're peering over his shoulder during moments of private revelation. And then there's the sensory world surrounding these studies. Imagine the smell of the room during his dissections, the faint, unsettling odor of preserved bodies, mingling with the scent of fresh herbs Leonardo might have used to mask the harsher realities of his work. The quiet sounds, the careful slicing of flesh, the soft rustling of cloth, the occasional murmur of observation. It's a scene far removed from the grandeur of courtly life and public acclaim, a solitary pursuit in a world that often regarded dissection as taboo or profane. Yet, Leonardo persisted, driven by a quiet, almost reverent desire to understand the machinery beneath the soul. There's a subtle irony here too. The same man who could render a portrait of stunning psychological depth capturing the mysterious smile of the Mona Lisa or the explosive drama of the Last Supper, was simultaneously sketching muscles and tendons that no one else was looking at. He was both an artist of sublime beauty and a scientist of meticulous, if unfinished, detail. It's as if his mind was a gallery of unfinished exhibitions, each room filled with wonders that never quite found their final form. You might chuckle quietly, imagining Leonardo in his workshop, juggling these two worlds. On one table, a half-finished painting; on another, a tray with anatomical specimens and a notebook stuffed with hastily sketched diagrams. The distractions must have been endless, like a child in a candy store of knowledge, unable to resist the allure of the next sweet idea. Perhaps he was the original multitasker, or maybe just the ultimate procrastinator of his own ambitions. Either way, his anatomical work stands as a quiet monument to the beauty of unfinished science. It is worth noting that debate continues about the extent to which Leonardo's anatomical inquiries influenced later medical science. Some scholars argue that had his notebooks been published earlier, they could have revolutionized anatomy centuries before it actually happened. Others caution that his work, while detailed, was still entwined with artistic interpretation and lacked the rigorous experimental method that defines modern science. This ongoing discussion underscores the complexity of Leonardo's legacy, a man forever perched on the cusp between art and science, between curiosity and completion. As you close the pages of these anatomical sketches, you feel a gentle melancholy mixed with awe. Here is a man who sought to unlock the secrets of life itself, who peered beneath the skin to map the intricate dance of muscles and blood, yet who never quite completed the story. It's a reminder that brilliance doesn't always arrive in neat, finished packages. Sometimes it lives in the margins, in the half-drawn lines, and in the quiet spaces where ideas linger, waiting to be rediscovered. So, as you let your eyes drift from the delicate curves of a muscle to the faint outline of a bone, you might find comfort in Leonardo's unfinished symphony of science. It's a whisper from the past that says okay, not to finish everything, because the pursuit, the endless wondering, the fearless imagining without boundaries is where the true magic lies. And perhaps in that unfinished science, Leonardo's greatest masterpiece was the very act of looking deeper, always deeper, into the mysteries of the human body and the human mind.
You find yourself standing before a canvas gently lit by the soft glow of an oil lamp, the air tinged with the faint, earthy scent of linseed oil and aged wood. The brush pauses mid-stroke, frozen in time, as if Leonardo himself had just stepped away for a moment, distracted by a sudden whisper of inspiration from some distant corner of his restless mind. This is the world of Leonardo's unfinished paintings. Those tantalizing glimpses into his creative process, where the brush meets the canvas but never quite settles into completion. It's almost poetic, isn't it? The irony of a man celebrated for masterpieces like the Mona Lisa and the Last Supper, yet so often leaving behind a trail of half-finished portraits and sketches that seem to whisper, "I almost had it." But then, something else called. You might imagine the scene: a cluttered studio filled with canvases leaning against walls, some bright with color, others mere outlines or ghostly. The quiet hum of the city outside fades as you lean in closer, drawn into the tension between Leonardo's perfectionism and his irrepressible urge to chase the next big idea. Leonardo's perfectionism was legendary. It's said that he would spend days, even weeks, agonizing over the tiniest detail: a hand, the curve of a smile, the way light kissed a cheek, refusing to sign a painting until it met his exacting standards. But there's a paradox here, isn't there? This same perfectionism often became a paralysis, a blockade that prevented him from ever declaring a work truly finished. Picture Leonardo, brush in hand, caught between a desire to perfect and the restless impulse to abandon the canvas for some new invention or anatomical study, scribbled feverishly in his notebooks. Take, for example, the famous painting known as The Adoration of the Magi. If you've never seen it, imagine a grand, swirling scene, bustling with figures and movement except, well, it's incomplete. The composition is sketched out, the expressions and forms hinted at, but the colors stay muted, the details unfinished, as if Leonardo lost interest somewhere mid. He began this work in 1481 but abandoned it after moving to Milan. The unfinished quality lends an eerie, dream-like atmosphere, like a half-remembered dream just slipping away. Art historians often muse that this painting offers a rare window into Leonardo's working mind, a snapshot of his restless creativity. You might wonder why such a genius didn't just finish what he started. Was it procrastination? Or perhaps a deeper refusal to settle? The truth is layered. Leonardo was, by nature, a man whose curiosity could not be contained. He was endlessly fascinated by the interplay of light and shadow, anatomy and mechanics, philosophy and nature's secrets. Once a painting ceased to challenge or intrigue him, or once a new concept ignited his imagination, he would simply move on, leaving behind those half-spun worlds on canvas. Here's a quirky tidbit. Leonardo S. St. Jerome in the Wilderness is another painting left mid-stroke, but it's not just unfinished. It's mysterious. The figure of St. Jerome is only partially rendered, with the saint's face and upper body sketched in, but the liner symbol often paired with Jerome remains, a ghostly outline. Some scholars suggest that Leonardo's fascination with the wilderness and solitude might have distracted him, or that he lost interest after grappling with the spiritual themes of the work. Others speculate that he was experimenting with new techniques of chiaroscuro, the dramatic contrast between light and dark, and abandoned the painting when the experiment didn't yield the effect he imagined. It's like you re-peeking into a secret dialogue between Leonardo and his canvas, a conversation abruptly paused. And then there's the Battle of Unghiari, a monumental mural Leonardo was commissioned to paint in the Palazzo Vecchio in Florence. This one is particularly famous not just for being unfinished, but for the mystery that surrounds it. Leonardo began this epic scene depicting the chaos and fury of 15th century warfare, but the fresco was never completed and eventually disappeared beneath layers of plaster and renovation. Art historians and enthusiasts have debated for centuries whether the original painting still exists, hidden behind walls, or was lost forever. Some even claim to have found faint traces, like whispers of the past, beneath more recent layers of paint. It is a potent reminder that Leonardo's unfinished works aren't just about what we see, but also about the tantalizing absences, those blank spaces where imagination meets history's uncertainty. You might smile to think that Leonardo's habit of leaving paintings incomplete is not unlike how many of us approach projects today. How many times have you started a hobby, a craft, or even a home improvement task, only to be lured away by the next shiny idea? In a world obsessed with finishing and polishing, Leonardo's legacy quietly champions the beauty of the in-between, the experiments, the drafts that never quite become final products. His studio was less a gallery of polished masterpieces and more a playground of ideas, each one as fleeting and fluid as the next. Interestingly, this tension between perfectionism and distraction is a point of scholarly debate. Some experts believe that Leonardo's failure to finish many paintings was a deliberate choice and artistic statement about the nature of creativity itself. Resisting the constraints of finality, others argue that it was simply a symptom of his personality, a restless mind that found the act of completion suffocating. It remains unclear if Leonardo viewed his unfinished works as failures or as necessary steps in his ceaseless quest for understanding. Perhaps, for him, the process was more vital than the product. Let us just imagine what it might have sounded like in Leonardo's studio. The soft tap of brushes against canvas, the gentle rustle of parchment, and the occasional frustrated sigh when a shade of color just didn't capture the light the way he wanted. Maybe there was even a chuckle or two, own quiet amusement at his inability to settle on one project when dozens clamored for his attention. You can almost hear him muttering, "Just one more idea," before abandoning a nearly finished portrait to chase the flight of a bird or the curve of a muscle in a freshly dissected limb. And speaking of muscle, here is a little-known fact. Leonardo was so obsessed with anatomy that he sometimes delayed painting because he wanted to understand every muscle and tendon perfectly. He dissected dozens of cadavers, sketching their inner workings with meticulous care, hoping to translate that knowledge into more lifelike figures. But he never published these studies, and many of his anatomical drawings were tucked away in notebooks, unseen for centuries. This quest for anatomical precision often stalled his paintings, as he chased scientific truth rather than artistic completion. So next time you gaze at a Leonardo portrait, know that beneath the surface lies a lifetime of anatomical obsession, sometimes at the expense of finishing the artwork itself. In a way, Leonardo's unfinished paintings invite you to participate in his creative process. They're not just incomplete images, they're open invitations to imagine what might have been. You find yourself filling in the blanks, completing the brushstrokes in your mind, wondering how the light would have played off the fabric, or what expression the subject's eyes would have finally settled into. It's a gentle reminder that creativity is a conversation, not just a monologue. And sometimes, the quiet spaces between the strokes say as much as the paint itself. So, as you linger in this quiet gallery of half-finished dreams, you begin to appreciate that Leonardo's genius was not about wrapping everything up with a neat bow. His brilliance was in the fearless pursuit of ideas, in the willingness to dive into new realms without the pressure to finish what was started. There is a profound, almost tender beauty in that, the courage to leave paintings to let the mind wander unfettered, and to accept that some works are meant to remain forever in progress. And if you ever feel restless, distracted, or like you're juggling too many unfinished projects yourself, remember Leonardo's example. Maybe it's okay not to finish everything. Maybe the joy lies in the journey, the dance of ideas, the sketches in the margins, the paintings left mid-stroke. In the end, perhaps the true masterpiece is the act of imagining without boundaries, of embracing the unfinished as a vital part of creation's endless rhythm.
You find yourself gently flipping through the delicate pages of Leonardo's notebooks, those legendary codices that seem almost alive with restless energy. The paper, slightly yellowed, crinkles softly under your fingertips, and faint traces of ink, some smudged, others crisp, reveal a kaleidoscope of sketches, diagrams, and sprawling notes in his distinctive mirror writing. It is as though you were stumbled upon a secret gallery of the mind, an intimate glimpse into the chaotic workshop of a genius who never seemed to quite finish anything. Here, in these margins and half-finished pages, you sense the pulse of Leonardo's endlessly wandering curiosity. This is not just a collection of drawings or technical blueprints, it's a labyrinth of ideas, each one a door inviting you to peer inside. You notice a sketch of a flying machine, its delicate wings spread wide, but it's only half realized. The mechanics are there, but the details seem to fade into airy conjecture. A few pages later, a curious anatomical study of a human heart drawn with such precision that you can almost hear the faint thump of life, yet the accompanying notes trail off mid-sentence as if the thought itself fluttered away. Leonardo S notebooks, like the Codex Atlanticus or the Codex Leicester, are the closest thing we have to the raw, unfiltered thoughts of the Renaissance mind. They are as much a testament to his boundless imagination as they are a record of his deep frustrations. Here, the evidence of his genius and his restlessness is written in ink and graphite. It's easy to picture him, a candle burning low on his cluttered desk, eyes flickering between the page, and some distant inspiration, never quite settling long enough to complete a project before another idea pulls him in a new direction. One mainstream fact you'll find fascinating is that Leonardo filled over 13,000 pages of notebooks during his lifetime. That's right, thousands and thousands of pages packed with everything from engineering marvels to philosophical musings, poetry, and even recipes. Imagine that. A man who painted the Mona Lisa, but also jotted down notes on how to make varnish for painting, observations on the flow of water, and designs for a mechanical knight that could sit up and move its arms. These notebooks weren't meant for public consumption. They were his private playground, a refuge for his tireless mind. But here has a quirky tidbit that might surprise you. Leonardo's handwriting wasn't just backward for the sake of secrecy or eccentricity. Scholars believe he was left-handed, and writing from right to left prevented his ink from smudging, a practical solution rather than a cryptic code. So those mirror-scripted pages you see? They're like a secret handshake from Leonardo to anyone patient enough to decipher them. It's as if he was whispering to future generations, "If you want to understand me, you'll have to lean in and pay attention." As you wander deeper into these manuscripts, you can't help but feel a touch of whimsical melancholy. Here lies the beauty of unfinished thoughts, sketches that capture the flicker of an idea, but never quite catch the flame. You might find a detailed drawing of a bridge designed to be both strong and flexible, with intricate notes about materials and mechanics. Yet no record suggests the bridge was ever built or even tested. It's like glimpsing a shadow of what might have been, a hint of potential suspended in time. Experts still ponder why Leonardo left so many projects incomplete. Was it his perfectionism, his insatiable curiosity pulling him toward the next challenge? Or perhaps a deeper philosophical belief that the journey of discovery was more valuable than the final product? Some suggest that Leonardo's notebooks, scattered and sprawling, were never meant to be finished in the traditional sense. Instead, they were living documents, evolving with his thoughts, a continuous experiment in understanding the world. Imagine sitting beside him in his studio, inhaling the faint scent of wood shavings, ink, and old parchment. You'd hear the scratch of quill on paper, the occasional muttered self-reminder, and the rustle of papers as he flips back to an earlier idea, only to abandon it moments later for something new. This restless dance between concentration and distraction is almost hypnotic, a reminder that creativity rarely follows a straight line. Now, in the margins of these pages, you find doodles and half-jokes, almost like Leonardo's way of lightening the weight of his intellectual pursuits. A tiny caricature of a bird with exaggerated wings, a whimsical note about the flight of a bat, or a sketch of a curious contraption topped with a smiling sun. These playful touches reveal a side of Leonardo rarely captured in the grand narratives of art and science, a man who found wonder and humor even in the throes of his obsessive inventiveness. Here, as a gentle irony for you, Leonardo invented the concept of the helicopter centuries before it became a reality, but he never built one. His sketches show a device with a spiral rotor resembling a giant screw intended to lift off the ground. It's an astonishing vision, but it remained a drawing, a dream on paper. Centuries later, engineers would confirm that his design, while visionary, wouldn't have worked with the materials and technology available in his time. Still, isn't it comforting that even the greatest minds have ideas that remain forever out of reach? Turning another page, you stumble upon a section filled with anatomical studies. Leonardo's fascination with the human body led him to dissect dozens of corpses, mapping muscles, bones, and organs with painstaking accuracy. Yet despite these groundbreaking studies, he never published his findings. Instead, these notes stayed locked away, a private treasure trove of knowledge. This adds a layer of mystery. Why keep such revolutionary insights hidden? Scholars debate whether Leonardo feared backlash from the church, or if he simply preferred to keep his discoveries personal, a secret dialogue with life and death. The sensation of peering into Leonardo's notebooks is like wandering through a vast, unfinished museum where every room holds a different wonder. One moment you're looking at war machines, cannons, catapults, armored vehicles, and the next you're immersed in fluid dynamics, observing sketches of swirling water and eddies that reveal an early grasp of natural forces. It's a reminder that Leonardo's mind didn't just leap from one discipline to another. It was a tapestry woven from countless threads, each one vibrant yet incomplete. And yet this very incompleteness is what makes Leonardo's legacy so profoundly human. In a modern world obsessed with productivity and polished results, there is something liberating about the messy genius who leaves us with tantalizing fragments instead of finished masterpieces. His notebooks encourage us to embrace the beauty of unfinished business, to find joy in the process of imagining without the pressure to conclude. You might smile at the thought that despite all his genius, Leonardo was perhaps the original serial doodler. Today, we joke about people who start a dozen tabs on their browser and never finish reading any of them. Leonardo had his own Renaissance-era version. Dozens of projects, notebooks, and ideas, all open at once in his mind, each one beckoning him before he could fully commit. It is almost reassuring to know that even a mind as extraordinary as his could be so easily distracted. As you close the notebook gently, the faint scent of aged paper lingers in the air, mingling with the quiet hum of curiosity that seems to echo from those unfinished pages. You realize that the half-formed inventions, the sketches fading at the edges, and the musings trailing off into silence are not failures but invitations, an open door to the endless wonder of possibility. Leonardo da Vinci teaches us that brilliance doesn't always come wrapped up neatly, that the beauty of creativity often lies in the questions left unanswered, and the ideas left to float freely, waiting for the next dreamer to catch them. So as you tuck these thoughts away for the night, there's a gentle comfort in knowing that it's okay not to finish everything. After all, Leonardo's unfinished manuscripts remind us that the mind's true art is in its fearless pursuit of the unknown, the joy of imagining without boundaries, and the quiet magic of ideas half-whispered in the margins. And with that you drift off, carrying a little piece of that restless genius with you into your dreams.
You find yourself gently leafing through one of Leonardo's notebooks, the pages crackling softly under your fingertips, each sheet a whisper of unfinished thoughts and half-formed dreams. The ink, faded but still vivid enough to trace, dances with sketches of machines that never soared, anatomical studies that never found their way to print, and notes sprawling in every direction like ivy seeking the sun. It's a quiet kind of magic here, one that doesn't demand completion, but rather celebrates the raw pulse of imagination itself. There's a peculiar kind of beauty in this chaos, isn't there? The unfinished. In a world obsessed with polished perfection, Leonardo's scattered genius reminds you that sometimes the most profound brilliance is found not in the final stroke, but in the very act of daring to dream. The Mona Lisa's enigmatic smile might be his most famous gift to the world, but these incomplete works, the sketches of flying machines that never lifted off, the anatomical diagrams that never made it to lectures, the treatises half-written hold a secret charm all their own. They're a testament to a mind that never stopped chasing the next question, the next idea, even if it meant leaving many things forever in progress. Imagine the scent of aged parchment mingling with the faint temps of iron gall ink, the smell of dust motes drifting lazily through a sunbeam in a dimly lit Florentine workshop. It's the kind of atmosphere where time feels suspended, where the future is just a sketch away, and where the act of imagining is more important than the act of finishing. Leonardo's studio wasn't a place of neat, final products. It was a playground for the restless spirit, a sanctuary for curiosity that refused to be tamed. You might be surprised to learn that Leonardo actually started over a dozen different flying machine designs throughout his life, each one a variation on the theme of human flight, from the ornithopter, which mimics the flapping of bird wings, to the aerial screw, a precursor concept to the modern helicopter. Yet none of these machines ever moved beyond the page. It wasn't for lack of creativity or intellect. Leonardo's understanding of aerodynamics, even centuries ahead of his time, was remarkable, but the limitations of materials, the sheer complexity, and perhaps his own shifting interests kept these brilliant concepts grounded in the realm of sketches rather than soaring realities. Here's a little quirk that might tickle your fancy. Some of Leonardo's incomplete inventions were so wildly imaginative that they border on the whimsical. One such design was a mechanical lion, which, according to his notes, could walk forward, open its chest to reveal a bouquet of lilies, and then close up again. A robot with a romantic twist, perhaps. A Renaissance-era Valentine's Day card in mechanical form. While the lion was never built, the idea alone sparks a warm chuckle. It's as if Leonardo was reminding us that creativity isn't just about utility or function. It's about delight, surprise, and sometimes a bit of theatrical flair. Now, of course, not everyone agrees on what these unfinished projects say about Leonardo. Some scholars argue that his inability to complete many works reflects a certain restlessness, or even a perfectionist paralysis. Was he so demanding of himself that he was never satisfied enough to declare a project done? Others suggest that his wide-ranging curiosity simply led to a natural diffusion of focus, a mind too fertile to be confined by the constraints of a single endeavor. Debate continues about whether his unfinished works were failures, or rather the true expression of a genius who embraced the process over the product. But here's something to ponder as you let your eyes wander over those half-completed pages. The world we live in today is shaped not only by finished masterpieces, but also by the echoes of ideas that never reached their conclusion. Leonardo's unfinished inventions, for instance, laid the groundwork for centuries of innovation, inspiring engineers and dreamers long after his time. The fact that he didn't build a working helicopter doesn't lessen the impact of his aerial screw design. It just means that the seed of the idea was planted, waiting for future minds to nurture it into reality. There's an almost poetic melancholy in this, isn't there? A reminder that even the greatest minds are human, filled with contradictions. Leonardo was a man who studied the intricacies of the human body with surgical precision, yet he left many of his anatomical studies unpublished. He dissected dozens of cadavers, mapping muscles and bones with astonishing detail, but these discoveries remained hidden in his private notebooks. Imagine the quiet frustration, or perhaps the gentle acceptance, he must have felt, knowing that some of his most groundbreaking work might never see the light of day in his lifetime. And yet, this very imperfection is the heart of his legacy. It's a comforting thought, especially in a world obsessed with ticking boxes and finishing tasks. Leonardo's life whispers to you that it's okay to be a work in progress, to wander from one fascination to the next without always reaching a destination. That the joy of imagining, of sketching those wild ideas in the margins of a page, carries its own kind of accomplishment. Picture the sound of a quill scratching against parchment, the soft rustle of turning pages, the faint murmur of a Florentine market outside the workshop window. There is a gentle rhythm to Leonardo's unfinished symphony of thoughts, a cadence that invites you to slow down, to savor the in-between moments where ideas are born but not yet confined. This is creativity in its purest form. Fluid, messy, endlessly curious. And if you listen closely, you might even hear a subtle chuckle hidden in those sketches, the playful wink of a man who knew that not everything had to be perfect to be meaningful. After all, who else but Leonardo would dream up a giant crossbow meant more to intimidate enemies than to actually be used in battle? This colossal weapon, sketched in bold lines and ambitious scale, was never constructed. Perhaps it was another of his whimsical what-if experiments, a reminder that sometimes the grandest ideas exist more comfortably in the mind than in reality. So, as you close the notebook gently, you carry with you a sense of wonder, not just at Leonardo's genius, but at his beautifully imperfect process. His unfinished works are not failures or half-hearted attempts. They are living proof of a mind that dared to wander far beyond the boundaries of his time. They invite you to embrace your own unfinished dreams, to find joy in the sketches and scribbles of your imagination, and to remember that true brilliance doesn't always come wrapped in neat packages. In the end, Leonardo da Vinci teaches us that the art of creation is as much about the journey as the destination. His legacy is woven from the threads of curiosity, wonder, and the fearless pursuit of ideas that may never see completion but will forever inspire. So, next time you find yourself stuck on a project or hesitant to finish something, think of Leonardo's scattered notebooks and half-built machines. Take comfort in the beauty of the unfinished and let your mind roam freely, knowing that sometimes the most profound impact comes not from finishing, but from dreaming without limits.
You find yourself standing at the edge of a vast, sunlit studio, the air thick with the faint scent of aged parchment and the whisper of graphite dust. Around you, scattered across wooden tables and tucked into leather-bound notebooks, are fragments of a mind that never rested, never sat still. These are Leonardo's unfinished dreams, half-drawn machines that might have flown, sketches of anatomical wonders that were never fully explained, and paintings paused mid-stroke, as if the artist had simply wandered off to chase the next flicker of curiosity. It's tempting to think of a legacy as something neat and complete, a tidy package wrapped up and tied with a bow. But Leonardo's legacy is more like a sprawling mosaic, rich with beauty precisely because it's incomplete. The Mona Lisa's smile may have captured the world's fascination, yet it's the restless, unfinished inventions and the tantalizing mysteries scribbled in his notebooks that continue to stir the imagination centuries later. Leonardo da Vinci, the archetype of the Renaissance man, was less interested in finishing projects than in the exhilaration of discovery itself. His mind was a never-ending whirlpool of ideas that often pulled him away before the last dot was placed. You might imagine him as a brilliant but easily distracted dreamer, his gaze flickering from one grand vision to another, unable, or perhaps unwilling, to settle. And while that might sound like a recipe for frustration, it's exactly why his influence endures, because brilliance isn't always tidy or complete. Sometimes it's the unfinished symphonies, the half-built machines, and the open-ended questions that inspire the deepest wonder. A mainstream fact you might have heard. Leonardo's notebooks contain more than 13,000 pages of drawings and writings. Yet only a fraction of these were ever published or fully developed in his lifetime. Think of the sheer volume, thousands of pages filled with observations, ideas and sketches, many of which were tucked away, hidden from the world for centuries. These notebooks reveal a mind that never stopped questioning, never stopped imagining, even if the projects themselves never reached completion. But here's a quirky detail that often slips under the radar. Among his many inventions, Leonardo sketched designs for a mechanical knight, essentially a robot, capable of sitting, waving its arms and moving its head. This was way ahead of its time, a glimpse of humanoid machines centuries before they became a staple of science fiction. Yet frustratingly, there's no evidence he ever built it. Instead, the design sat quietly in his notebooks, waiting, perhaps, for a future that could bring it to life. You might say Leonardo was the original procrastinator of robotics. Experts still debate why Leonardo left so many projects unfinished. Was it simply a symptom of his boundless curiosity pulling him in too many directions? Or was there a deeper, more philosophical reason at play? An understanding that the act of imagining and exploring was more valuable than the end product? Some scholars suggest that Leonardo's unfinished works represent a kind of artistic and scientific humility, a recognition that knowledge and creation are never truly complete, but always evolving. This idea that imperfection and incompletion hold their own kind of beauty is a theme that echoes through his life and work. You might wonder what it feels like to live inside a mind so full of restless energy. Imagine the rustle of parchment as Leonardo flips through his own notebooks, the scratch of quill on paper as he sketches out another contraption, the faint scent of oil from his paints mingling with the earthy aroma of fresh ink. It's a sensory dance of creation, interrupted and resumed, a melody with missing notes that somehow still sings. There's a poetic irony in the fact that Leonardo's most famous painting, the Mona Lisa, took years to complete. Yet even that masterpiece was never truly finished by his own standards. Some art historians believe he continued refining it until the very end of his life, adding subtle layers and details, never quite declaring it done. And perhaps that was the heart of Leonardo's genius, the understanding that creativity is a living, breathing process, one that resists finality. Picture the scattered sketches of flying machines, their delicate wings and intricate gears hovering just on the edge of possibility. Leonardo imagined human flight with a passion that bordered on obsession, but he never built a working prototype. Instead, his flying machines remain as beautiful, haunting glimpses of what might have been, a testament to the power of dreaming beyond the limits of one's era. It's a reminder that sometimes the blueprint itself can be as inspiring as the finished structure. Leonardo's anatomy studies are another window into his unfinished legacy. He dissected dozens of human and animal bodies, creating detailed drawings that revealed the intricacies of muscles, bones, and organs with astonishing accuracy. Yet despite the groundbreaking nature of this work, he never published his findings. The reasons are unclear, perhaps fear of controversy or simply the relentless pull of his next curiosity. Whatever the cause, these studies remained hidden for centuries, their brilliance only recognized long after Leonardo's time. Even now, modern scholars pore over his notebooks with a mixture of awe and frustration. Debates continue about the true intentions behind many of his inventions and writings. Was he attempting to solve practical engineering problems, or were some designs more philosophical exercises, reflections on nature and mechanics? Did he view his sketches as literal plans or as poetic explorations? The ambiguity invites us to engage not just with what Leonardo created, but with how and why he created it. If you pause for a moment, you might notice a faint chuckle stirring in the quiet corners of this story. Leonardo, the ultimate multitasker, was perhaps the world's first idea addict. Imagine the frustration of his workshop assistants, caught between the urgency of projects and Leonardo's sudden shifts in focus. It's as if he was always chasing the next spark, leaving behind a trail of unfinished masterpieces like breadcrumbs for future dreamers. In a way, His legacy is a giant to-do list that no one will ever complete, and that's perfectly okay. Leonardo's restless creativity teaches us a gentle lesson that the measure of brilliance isn't always in completion, but in the courage to imagine without boundaries. His unfinished works are invitations to think beyond the conventional, to embrace curiosity as a journey rather than a destination. They remind us that sometimes the questions we leave open are more valuable than the answers we rush to close. As you imagine the soft rustling of those ancient pages, the faint tapping of a quill, and the distant hum of a mind forever in motion, you begin to appreciate the quiet beauty of imperfection. Leonardo's unfinished symphony is not a sign of failure but a celebration of the endless dance between thought and creation. It's a legacy that whispers to us across centuries, encouraging us to keep dreaming, keep questioning, and above all, keep imagining. And now, as your thoughts drift gently through the corridors of this extraordinary mind, the pace of your breath slows, the world outside softens, and the vibrant chaos of Leonardo's creativity begins to fade into a calm, comforting quiet. You feel wrapped in the warmth of countless half-formed ideas, each one a spark of possibility, resting like a lullaby on the edge of sleep. The scent of old paper, the faint echo of a brushstroke, the ghostly hum of gears never quite turning. All these sensations blend into a soothing embrace, inviting you to let go of the need for perfection. Here, in this gentle twilight, it's enough to simply imagine, enough to rest in the unfinished beauty of a mind that never stopped reaching beyond the stars. And so, as the pages of Leonardo's notebooks close softly in your mind's eye, and the echoes of his restless curiosity grow quiet, you find yourself drifting on a slow current of calm. The worries of today can wait. For now, there is only the soft darkness, the comfortable silence, and the promise of rest. Sleep now. Sleep well.